Let's drink some sodas. All right, so so yesterday what we did was we worked on actually creating a server. What module did we use for that again? Anyone remember? Node's not a module.
FS.
Node is our actual execution environment. We use the FS module for what? What do we use for the FS module for?
Read and write.
For actually reading a file. And then what other module did we use to create a server? HTTP, right? Okay. Now let's go back to that code that we had just to take a quick look at it. So I have my server.js here. And again, what we were doing is we were doing some if checks here to find out what URL we were on. And then we could also check some different things, like we could check the request method by just saying request.method. Did we do that yesterday? Did we print out what the method was?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, right? So it was actually, it's all caps. We were getting capital GET, right? And the other thing that we were doing is then once we were inside of this, once we knew that our URL was the index route, we would then go and read that file. So right in here, fs.read file, and then we would actually ultimately hand it back, right? What if I had a whole bunch of different files, like static files, for instance, CSS files, JavaScript files, and so on, and I wanted to be able to dynamically handle all of those things? Does this seem like a scalable solution?
No.
Not so great, right? So how would I go about doing that? If we were using here the HTTP module, how might I do it?
Write a module.
Write a module, okay. But what would be inside the module? I mean, maybe, yeah. If I wanted to make it really modular, obviously I could put it outside of my server.js. So how would I handle multiple different types of files?
You call a read file on all of them?
So yeah, I might have to check a whole bunch of different URLs. So if I had a style.css somewhere, I might have to say is request.url /style.css. I might have another if check where I was saying if request.url is, I don't know, index.js, something like
Is it just
that, right?
in the content type that you have to change that?
Well, I just simply mean if we have a whole bunch of different files and I'm trying to find them and sort of handle them dynamically without having to constantly make a bunch of if checks. The way that we have it here, we're going to have to run some if checks, right? What else could I potentially match against? Like, say, if I had all of my JavaScript files in one particular directory, or I had all of my CSS files in one directory, what else could I maybe look at?
Or the folder itself?
Yeah, or I can maybe also look at the extension. So if I singled out the extension, if I'm looking for .js files, so if I use some kind of a some type of an index of, are you guys familiar with the index of function? So I can check for a substring inside of my request URL, and I could look for, say, .js files or something like that, right? So if the file name has a .js in it, then I could look for that file in some certain place, all right? Or if it had a .css in it, then I could look for it some other place. So I might be looking at the last however number of characters of my URL to see is it some static file that I'm looking for. Okay.
So is that like when you're doing a URL search? There was a module for URL search where it would search like the last 6 characters of your URL and return that. Is that similar to what we're talking about?
In a way, yeah. Because in this case, we're interested in the file extension. So that may not be the last 6 characters. It might be the last 3 characters, right, or the last 2 characters, depending on what the extension was. So that's kind of one way that I could potentially look for different things. Obviously, I can make my checks super specific, where I was saying if request.url equals this exact thing / style.css, then I would know exactly what to do with it. But as you guys can imagine, this would become very tedious having all these different if checks and different blocks, right? So today what we're going to introduce is something else. We're going to introduce another library, which we talked about yesterday, or maybe the day before. Because when I was demonstrating for you guys how to install different modules, we saw that we could install Express, right? So let's create a new project where we install Express. And I've got my Express demo project folder open here. So what's the first thing that we want to do when we're going to create a node project?
.js.
Install node. Init.
Install node.
Okay.
Did someone say install node? Hey, I already have node, all right? No, I'm kidding. Init. Okay, yeah. So what's the full command?
-y.
npm.
npm init. Good. And Joel mentioned -y. Why are we doing that?
It auto populates all the information that you need.
Yeah. What -y means is we just want to accept all the defaults. And I don't want to go through all those prompts where I need to specify, what do I want the name of the project to be. Naturally, the name is just going to be the name of the folder that I'm inside right now. So let's do that. Okay, so now I've got my little package.json. I don't have any dependencies yet because I haven't installed anything. So let's do that. How am I going to install this?
npm I. Express.
Yeah, look at that, shorthand. So we can do install or we can do I for short. Okay. All right, and that's going to take its time doing its thing. The next thing I'm going to do is actually create my my server.js file. All right, and then inside that, what I want to do is actually bring in Express. You guys remember how we do that? We want to require it. Exactly. So that was one of those things that we talked about not being available inside of a web browser, but it is available inside Node. Okay. So I'm going to do const express equals require express. Is everyone comfortable with this const keyword here? Yeah. Pretty good? Okay. So when we say const, we're basically saying this is something that's not going to change. Okay, so that express is not going to change at all. When we use the const keyword, sometimes we may be able to, we can still change different properties of an object. If we said const some object equals, something that had some different properties in it, I can still change the properties. I just can't reassign the value of that thing to some other value. I can't all of a sudden say express equals 5. That would be a problem. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to just take a look at what is express. Let's just console log express itself. Oops. All right. And then the way that I want to run this is how, guys? What do I want to use so that I get some nice hot reloading? NodeMon. Right. Or yeah, like node daemon, I think is technically what that is. So I want to run that against server.js. Okay. So we've got this huge thing here, and it is an object, but it is also a function, right? You guys see that? We actually have an opening curly brace, and then it says inside there that it is a function. So there's a lot of stuff available in there, and again, just like in the case when we were logging the actual request, we're not going to need all of this functionality, but I just wanted to show you guys that there's a lot going on with Express underneath the hood. Okay. Now the way that we create an Express app is like this. We can just say const again, and we're just saying our app is going to equal the result of invoking the top level express function. Okay. So let's do this. Hook that there. And then the last thing that we need to do when we've created an Express app is we also need to do the same thing that we did with when we were creating server the old way, which was what? Anyone remember? How do we get that server to actually be making or accepting connections?
Listen to a port.
We've got to listen, right? Yeah, exactly. So let's do that. So we'll say app.listen, and then we can give it a port number. So I can say 4000 if I want. And then I can also pass in a callback function if I want to actually say something here. So we'll just say console.log listening on port 4000. Okay, let's refresh that there and see we've got our little console log here. So we're listening on port 4000. That's good. Now, how could I actually return back some value from my application? I don't have any routes yet, right? Anyone know how we create routes with Express?
App dot, like, that's it.
Good. Yeah, so we could say app.get. And then if I want to do my index route, I could just do a / like this, right? And then what the second argument to this is going to be a callback function, which is going to take in a couple of arguments. So it's going to take in a request and a response, and oftentimes with Express you'll see these things just shorten to rec and res. So again, they stand for request and response. And what I want to do is just send something back from that, right? So let's just say res.send hello from Express. Okay, so my index route should actually return that to the page, right? Come over here, localhost 4000. Hello from Express. So it's as simple as that. That's our basic Express server. If I want to pass back JSON, what I can do is I can instead say JSON and then some JSON object. So we'll just say a property is called hello and the value of that property is world. Okay, so I've got an extension in my browser which actually enables me to see JSON like this, but it probably wouldn't look that way for you if you didn't have that extension installed. I think it's called JSON View, something like that. Okay. Okay, so rendering strings is obviously nice, but is that the way that we want to build our applications?
No.
No. How do we generally like building our applications? HTML. Okay. So we create some kind of, what's it called? It starts with a T. Template, right? We create sort of template files and then we inject some content into them. So what we're going to introduce here with this Express module is we're also going to introduce a templating engine, and it's called EJS. Okay, that will enable us to create some files where we can inject some content. Well, what do I need when I need a new module? I need to install it, right? So let's do that. So we'll go npm I EJS. Okay. Well, look, I have an npm update here. npm I-g npm. Notice how we're using npm to install it. Kind of nifty, right? All right, so that's all done. Good deal. So we've installed EJS. Now, in order to actually use EJS, we need to tell our application that we're going to be using that. Say that again? Require it? No, we don't actually have to require it in this case. Yes, we set it, right? App.set. And then we want to set the view engine to be EJS. And then we also need to set where our views are going to be, right? So where do we want our views to be? I'm just going to make a little views folder in here.
We could have called that anything though, right? The folder itself could be anything, we just call it out right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we call it staff.
Yeah, so if I want this to, so if instead I wanted it to be called templates, let's do that. Let's say templates. Okay. And then what we're doing is we're telling the application, I want my views to be in this particular folder. Okay, so that's kind of up to you. You could call it views, you could call it templates, whatever you like. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect it to the current directory that we're in inside this project, right? And we'll talk about this dir name in a second. Dunder. There's your friend Dunder, right? Okay, so, and then we're just going to concatenate that with a / templates. Just telling it, I want my templates to be inside here. Question? No? Alright, so let's talk about this Dunder here. Dunder dir name. What does that mean?
Current.
That'd be like a root.
It's the current directory that this particular file is in. Okay, so it will give me a completely stringified path all the way to this directory that we're in. Now, if I'm sharing this code with someone else, if I'm sharing the code with Joel, is his dir name going to be the same as mine?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, probably different, right? So that's why we don't want to be hard coding these things. We want to use something like this Dunder dir name, which will give us that path at that specific time. Okay.
So is it just going to be searching different folders until it finds templates?
No. The dir name is in, and let's just print this so that we actually see what this is. So here inside,
You need a semicolon after the parentheses for templates.
no. Down with semicolons. No. Yeah, actually, JavaScript is quite lenient as far as semicolons go. So you could pretty much get away with leaving them off everywhere. In most cases, there are some exceptions to that, but that's kind of like a stylistic thing, or depending on what project you were working on, they may have some stylistic requirements. Maybe we don't use semicolons at all, or we rarely use semicolons. It might be in a style guide or something like that. But the interpreter definitely won't give us any problems about it. That much is for sure. Okay, so let's do dir name. Okay, and then let's go back to our actual terminal here. Okay, so it's giving us the complete path to where we are, all the way to Express Demo. Okay, so that's why what we can do is we can take this full path that we have, and we can add that / to it, and then templates to it that will route it right to that folder as we want. Okay. Any other questions about that?
I have a question.
Mhm.
We need to do all these steps for each new project, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we just can't say like, oh, I'm doing a new project. I already installed Express. That's in a different folder. It's a different JSON. So I'm doing like new folder, new project. So I go through all this stuff, right?
Yeah, so it's sort of like, remember back in Python we were creating basically one virtual environment that we were using for all of our Flask projects, and then another one where we were using it for all of our Django projects.
Yeah.
The difference here is that we're actually sort of creating, it's not a new virtual environment, but we're installing all of our dependencies on a per project basis. Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, it'll be kind of a little bit more involved, and actually, I don't know if you guys remember, but in Project Week, Tanner showed off something where he had automated some of that boilerplate stuff that you need to do just to get a basic Express app up and running. So and I think he's got that up on GitHub, so you can actually, yeah. I wouldn't advise you to start using it right away, just because like you guys should sort of understand like the process involved with this first.
Ugh.
Yeah, but maybe later if you become an expert in it, you can just offload the work.
Can I ask just one more
It's
thing?
kind of like using a calculator, right? Yeah.
When you created the JSON, I noticed that you had the lock file. Was that because it was up and open in your in Visual Code, or is that a different? Or is
No,
that
this
something-
this is going to be created automatically once you start installing some dependencies.
Oh,
So the lock file is actually specifying what versions do we have.
okay.
Okay. So like if you were to look at the
So
lock,
it's not really like a file is locked, and I'm telling you that it's what you just said.
yeah, it's not a file that you would generally ever have to touch.
Okay.
But it is a good thing to include in your version control because as you can see, it will tie your project to specific versions. So like in this dependencies here, notice how we have some different, actually there are a ton of different dependencies. Excepts, did I install that? No, right? So where do you think that's coming from? Probably Express, yeah. I don't know that I don't know off the top of my head how many dependencies EJS has, but if we looked it up, probably not too many. Let's see, EJS. So it'll tell you here on npm 0 dependencies. Okay, but look, it has a lot of things depending on it. Almost 6,000 different other modules. Okay, so obviously, if we're seeing other modules in there that we didn't install directly, where did they have to come from? Express. They didn't come from EJS. EJS doesn't have any dependencies. Okay, so anything that we see inside this package lock that we didn't install is from Express, and you can also see it inside your node modules folder. You'll see that we have the accepts folder. We also have an array flatten folder, which corresponds to this right here. Okay, so these are all the dependencies that we now have once we installed Express. It brought in a lot of stuff, right? Yeah, a lot of things there. Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, back to this. We've set our view engine to EJS, and we've also set our views to be routed to that specific folder, right? So let's get rid of this little console log here. And then let's actually create a file inside of our templates folder so that we have something. I'm going to start out with just index.html, and then I'm going to change it. Okay. So we'll say hello meanies. Yeah, clever, I know. Alright, and then what I'm going to do, now that I have sort of my boilerplate HTML, I'm just going to change this to be an EJS file. Okay, so if I go over here, EJS, and then let's see if we can just render out this file. So over here, inside of our index route, let's do res.render. And then we're going to do index.ejs. I'm not sure that we even need the .ejs. Yeah, let's do it without that.
Is it because it's only looking for the string?
Because we've already set the view engine up here.
Oh, that's right.
We've already said, yeah, we're using EJS for our template. So let's do that. Back here. Okay. And we're actually getting our template here. Pretty exciting, I know. But EJS is also going to give us some other capabilities that you guys will remember from Python. Yes, Tom.
So I came across an exercise where you actually did that. So I've seen it before, but I guess my question is, with Express, would you still have been able to do it if you had left it as an index, the HTML? Or do you have to change it to an EJS, or can you like call or display or whatever you want to call it an actual .html file?
Well, I can still read an HTML file, in the same way that we did before.
Right?
And I could pass that back inside of an Express handler.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Still
Okay.
do that.
Thanks.
But we're not going to end up doing that because we're obviously using EJS for a reason, and the reason is we want to be able to inject some dynamic content into it. Right? Okay. So let's talk about how do we actually get some dynamic content into this thing. What did we do when we were inside our Python projects?
Context.
Yeah, we had this context object that we would pass to our views. And we can do the exact same thing here when we're working with EJS. So I'll create a little object, and I'll just say name. I gotta say Bob Smith. He is here, right?
Yep.
Bob Smith. I love it. Yeah, for once you're here. Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Woohoo! All right, so inside of our index.ejs, let's actually output Bob. So we're going to say name. So you got double mustache tags. That looks familiar to you guys, right? Actually, wait.
Would that work?
No, that's not going to work.
Would it work?
I'm thinking in Python right now. We need this, right? Okay, and then actually to output this, we need to use the equal sign like that. Okay? So if I don't use the equal sign and I'm doing angle brackets %, what's that going to do?
Read the logic.
Yeah, it's sort of creating my control structures for me. But here I just wanted to simply put something on the screen, essentially. All right, so let me save that. And then I'll put in, instead of this, let's say hello, that, and then let's refresh this guy. There we go. Bob Smith is in the building. All right, now that's great. What if I want to pass a actual array of users as opposed to just Bob? How am I going to do that? Yeah, we can actually create an array of users inside this context object that we're passing to our view, right? So for each one, I'm going to have, well, let's just do an array of names for now. All right, so I've got Bob Smith, I've got Billy Algos, got Tom. Tom needs no last name, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, so here we go. So let's loop through these guys. Let's do, we want to do the %sign, right? And then we could say for user of users. And then I need to open up a curly brace right there, and then I need to close this out as well. All right, so that's the syntax that we'll be using when we're looping through things inside of EJS. Okay, and then to close that out, all I need to do is go like that, right? I just need one ending curly brace. So actually, if you guys want to, it might be easier to just kind of go like this and then split it up afterwards. So if you go like that and then you just return a couple times and then come back over here, you want to open up another tag with the %sign and then again like that, right? Okay, so inside this block, I want to output that specific user, right? How do I do that? Yeah, what's it called right now? These aren't, remember, these aren't objects. They're just strings, right? So each one is a specific string. Okay. It's just going to equal user because user again is a string. Say it like that. All right. Let's check this out. Okay. But actually we didn't put those inside p tags, so it kind of looks like they're all jumbled up. Let me just drag this out. Whoops. Oh, VS Code also has this other nice feature I'm not sure if you guys have used before, but if I want to wrap a particular element inside something, I can do Command-Shift-P to do that, wrap with abbreviation. Then I can just say I want each one of these to be inside of a p tag, like that. Kind of nice, right? Yeah. Dreamweaver. Man, Dreamweaver. Woo, you almost gave me a heart attack there, Tom. Someone's using Dreamweaver here. Yikes. Alright, so here we go. We actually have each user on its own line. That's kind of nice. Cool. Alright. What's the other thing that we wanted to handle kind of at the, or that we talked about at the beginning of the demo here? Anyone remember the beginning? Yeah, what did we start with?
Files?
Yeah, we were talking about dealing with static files. Okay? So let's see how we can actually handle those inside Express in a way that we don't have to keep asking, you know, is the URL this, is the URL that? Some really inefficient way, right? Okay. So Express has this thing called a static method. So inside here. And what I can do is I can say app.use. And does anybody know what app.use means? I just want to touch on it briefly because it's kind of important. No? Okay, so it means that for every request that comes into our application, we're going to be using whatever function goes inside of here. Okay? I can also change it so that I only have it happening on certain routes. So if I say app.use and I pass some specific part of a path in front of that, I could say I only want this function to be used on, you know, if the front part of the path is this. However, we're just going to use it, and what we're going to use is this thing called express.static. Okay, and you can see takes in a string, and what the root argument is just where do I want to find those static files. Okay, so that root string is where are my static files. So I'm just going to direct it to a static folder which I haven't created yet, but let's just go create one real quick. So if I create a static folder, maybe I want to put a CSS file in there of some sort. Okay. And we'll do something really obvious so that we know it's working. So I'm going to say background is green. Alright, close that out. And then here, I want to route it directly to my static folder. How do you think I'll do that? So we're going to use dunder_name, exactly like we did here. Right? And then we're going to tack that onto the, or we're going to tack onto the end of that our static. Okay, so I'll say the current directory that we're in, and then we'll put static on the end of that. Alright, hopefully we're not getting any errors in our server, so it keeps refreshing for us, no problems yet. Okay, now inside my index, the way that I'm going to reference that is that all my static files should be accessible, at least according to the way that I was using express.static, they should be accessible at the root level. So I should be able to just call /style.css and be good with it, right? Let's try that. So link my style sheet, and then my href is going to be just /style.css. Okay. I did not get a restart on there, and I believe part of that is because NodeMon is not watching for changes of EJS files by default. And I think we can change that real quick. Let me try something. So if I say nodemon dash e, oh, what was the hyphen there? So if I say nodemon dash e, I can tell it I also want to watch for EJS file changes or JS file. Okay, and then I'll still say server.js. Okay, so let's see what happens if we make a change here inside my body. Hello again. If I save that here, it actually gets restarted because I told it also watch for EJS file changes. So let's do that. Let's go back here. There we go. Okay. Do you have any questions about how we're loading up style or that style sheet?
Does that mean we are whenever we are rendering this EJS file, we are also sending a GET request of the style sheet, and that .use is handling that request?
Yeah, of course. So what the .use is doing is, or actually not the .use, the express.static is doing is it's looking through those folders, or that particular folder, to see is there a style.css file. Okay. So what if I actually, if I change the name of it, it's not going to find it, right? And what kind of a issue would we get there?
404.
Right. So if I refresh this, obviously we lose our styles. And then if I look in the network tab, let me redo it here. So notice how still.css was canceled because we couldn't find it, right? And you could see, why was that canceled? It's kind of odd.
Is it in the console?
No, it just, I don't know why it's saying it was canceled. That's sort of weird. I would expect to see a 404 error, right? Huh. Oh, no cores? Well, that's really odd. But obviously, so express.static couldn't find that file because it wasn't in there, right? I misnamed it on purpose so that it wouldn't be able to find it. But that's what it's going to do. Depending on the ordering of these statements, so if we look inside of our server.js, notice that we have the app.use up here on line 5. That means that for every request that comes in, we're going to be running this. If I had this app.use down below my app.get, the index route, what would happen then?
It could potentially handle one of the requests and then never get to that .use.
Yeah, that could happen. So for instance, if I put inside here, instead of a / an asterisk, meaning I want this particular route to handle everything, and then I moved my app.use all the way down to the bottom, well, which route is going to get hit first? This one. And it's going to handle everything because I put an asterisk inside there. And in fact, if you leave off this argument entirely, it would simply run that for every GET request that comes through. Okay? So the ordering of routes in Express is extremely important so that you don't get something, you handle something in the correct place and with the correct function. Right? Let me double check my notes here and make sure that we covered everything we were supposed to. I think I did. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot here. Okay. Yeah. Templating engine. Yeah. Express.static. Dir name. We talked about that. I think that was pretty much it. So we did some looping. We saw how to get static files using express.static. You guys have any other questions on what we covered today? Did it all pretty much make sense? Let me see some thumbs on this. Good? Good. Billy? Phone? Oh, you're wavering? clarifications?
No, that makes sense. I'm just nowhere near this.
Oh, you're just not there. Okay, that's all right. That's totally cool. All right, cool. Well, I'll let you guys get back to it, and then again, we'll do around 3:00 the deck of cards demo. Anyone who wants to see that, we'll plan to meet up here. Okay.
Sweet.
You know, I think one of the exercises when we redo cars and cats, I think it wants us to use